Well, we'll kick this off. Welcome, everyone, to this week's storage provider call. We've got a number of things to discuss this week. I think they're all going to be pretty interesting and pretty cool. I've got my friend Sparky up here. You'll probably recognize him from the support channels. He is our support lead, and he works 28 hours a day somehow, making sure that everybody has all their ports forwarded and storage providing folders not over provisioned and all sorts of all sorts of things that we encounter in the Discord. But we'll get to him and hear his voice in a minute. First thing that I would like to cover is that since last week's call, we have launched the full license software. So that was first made available last Friday, just after last week's call, as we said. So we launched that. Sparky was there for launch day, and we're going to talk to him about that. How about you unmute Sparky, and we'll discuss how that went.
Yeah, so, hi Henry, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Good.
So last Friday, the first day of the full license software, I'll just ask you this first. Had you used the full license software first? Had you used it before that day?
Yeah, so I'd, along with a couple of other guys from the community, had been sort of beta testing it a week or two before it got released. So yeah, we'd already had a sort of good idea of getting installed on our own sort of test providers, and also I installed on my real provider prior to launch.
Awesome. When you were beta testing, what was the setup process like at that point? I don't know that we had the fully finished installer at that point, right?
It was quite similar. That beta process was similar to what was finally released. It's more a case of finding some of those early bugs whereby with different users, so setups, some people run as root, some people run as their user account, people running different versions of Linux, etc. It was catching some of those kind of early issues we found with a couple of other guys prior to launching. But yeah, the overall process and the final GUI was pretty much the same.
Cool. So on Friday, I was around that day, but I had a wedding for part of the day, so I was just kind of following along in some of the channels. But I'll ask you this: did you find any more of those kind of edge cases and weird Linux configuration bugs? Did you find any of those?
Oh yes. Yeah, Friday was a fun day. I think about 4:30 a.m. my time. I finished on Saturday. Technically, it was. But yeah, the first few guys who run through the installer, we found various kind of issues where their setups were just different to the guys who were beta testing it. And big credit to the developers, mainly James, who kind of stepped in and found and fixed these issues pretty quickly within Friday evening. So most of the guys who ran into an issue, we were able to get fixed, and they were able to get the software installed.
Yeah. So if you were following along in the Discord or in the channels on Friday, I think you might have seen that there were some installs that were just kind of different. I think one of the things that I heard from our IT guys that Linux can be difficult to develop for because right after you install the image for the first time, from that point forward, virtually everyone's configuration deviates, and it can be challenging to encompass a lot of those edge cases. But so you said that that our developer James behind this piece of software, he was very active that day as well. To the point where I think on the Saturday, so the day afterward, I was following along in the channels then too, and I was expecting to continue to see some of these issues that people were running into, but I actually kind of found that the channel was pretty quiet that day, not because people weren't installing it still, but I think in some kind of crazy marathon session, I think we found pretty much all of the issues in that first 12 hours or whatever, and the Saturday went pretty smooth. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. I think since that first Friday night, we've had sort of 2 or 3 users who have run into an issue which we've had to triage and fix. some quite, in a way, amusing issues. For example, one user runs their Linux install with a German language, which the installer couldn't cope with because it was looking for English words, and someone else running their browser with a French language setting. Again, so finding those issues, but those were the sorts of issues which were sort of left with after that Friday night, which are real sort of edge cases of different setups, which when you're developing software is easy to miss. So that's what we're left with now. Otherwise, from what we can tell, everyone's getting through the installation pretty much successfully on their own without needing too much support. This week it's been really quiet, which is a good thing.
Yeah, so it was a pretty funny 3-day arc because you go from the Friday where the developers in the channel talking right to people, getting everything fixed within a couple hours, to the Saturday where you had a couple of language bugs that got knocked out as well, to the point where the Sunday, I think I even heard that our friend Jeff installed from his phone. Like he installed on Linux through an SSH session on his phone from like a hot tub or something. That last part might not be true, but
that's just a rumor.
Yeah, that's just a rumor. Might have been from the couch or something, but yeah, to the point where it just kind of worked, and I'm sure a lot of people cringe at the thought of using a like Linux terminal session from their phone, but it just goes to show that if you want to do it that way, you can, and it'll still be a pretty smooth install process. So that was kind of funny to see, especially after, just to kind of top off that interesting and productive couple days. So yeah, we came out of the weekend in a place where the installer works pretty well. We've gotten actually a lot of really good feedback. I think I'll ask for some of that toward the end of this call. But yeah, the installer definitely kind of follows the ethos and the philosophy that we went for with the Examiner of being, you don't need to be particularly tech savvy. I think we've made like the joke a couple times of, well, it's partially a joke, but there's some truth to it of like could your grandma set this up? Could this be in grandma's closet? And then we want really badly for the answer to be yes with everything we build. So that's definitely something that we brought to this installer. And I think for the people who haven't yet installed theirs or just kind of on the fence thinking about it, I think you'll be pretty pleasantly impressed and surprised with how smooth that goes. Particularly given that sometimes on Linux things can be challenging. But I think, I think it should be a pretty pleasant experience. That it kind of walks you through all the steps. It asks you where a couple things are. It'll try and look manually, or it'll try and look automatically for a couple things. And what would you say, James? Or sorry, Sparky. What would you say is the most challenging part of the install process?
The biggest problem has been finding the information about someone's installation in an automatic fashion. So one of the, as you mentioned, the key ethoses of this software installer was to make it as simple as possible and to avoid any user mistakes in the process. So one of the things the installer does is once you run it, it goes and searches your Linux provider to try and find SPD, find your metadata, and understand where everything is. And also, once it understands where things are, then it also backs up your metadata as a precaution measure, just in case anything does go wrong. But that process of finding where all these things are with Linux and with all the different setups was probably the trickiest part of this whole thing. That's where most of the issues have been found, is in finding those paths and things. We could have gone down a different route and kind of requested that information from the users and let them input it. But obviously that's just not as simple and user-friendly as we wanted.
Yeah, I've heard the joke before that the hardest part of engineering is counting. And I think it might be true to say that the hardest part of software engineering is just finding files sometimes. So, yeah, that's something that I think is already in a pretty good place. I mean, I don't see a lot of issues coming from that, just looking through the channel and from people that I've talked to. But yeah, maybe there is some, if your metadata is kept in some really weird place or something like that. I guess, yeah, that maybe is like one of the last places that there could be a hiccup with this installer. If you're really trying to hide your metadata from the installer, maybe it'll need some help getting there. But yeah, I think overall the fact that the hardest part of the installer is that sometimes, if like some of the time, if your metadata is very buried, you'll have to just tell it where it was. It couldn't automatically find it, but that's the hardest part, and that's definitely something that most people don't even encounter that issue or that encounter. So I've been very impressed with the full license installer. I think James did a great job, and the rest of the team that helped support that and deliver that piece of software. Yeah, so kudos for that. For those of you who are intently listening and you maybe already have your full license ordered, or you're looking forward to it being an option for Windows providers, so we did choose to deliver Linux first, and that's because we found that most of the people who were interested in using the full license providers were already running Linux installs. But there are a number of people who are running Windows, and we wanted to develop it in such a way that it would definitely be able to cater to that use as well. So at this point, the delivery method that we're pursuing is to use Docker. So I think we're already pretty far into the process of like having a fully Dockerized version of this full license. And I think I've heard that we can expect it in the next week or two, which I'm very much looking forward to. So that would be that would allow it to run on Windows machines as well. You will need Docker, the software, but that's not too hard to do. There are a number of really good guides on how to do that. And well, not only are there good guides on how to install Docker, but there is a very good guide on how to actually install our full license, which is something that I forgot to mention earlier. So Sparky here has put together a very good and deep and encompassing guide on that totally talks you through how to do that install procedure. So that's already out there today on Linux. I've looked through it. I was very impressed. I think there might be there's a bit of a funny thing that can happen in software like documentation, where if you look on how to do something and then you see it's like 6 or 7 pages long, you might think, oh, that's really difficult. I'm not sure I want to do that. And then you look at it and you realize that it's only 6 or 7 pages because it talks you through how to do the whole thing. It holds your hand the whole time. So it might look like it's challenging, but it's really not. It's just because it's super in depth. There's screenshots everywhere, and I think that's the case here. Because in fact, some of the most daunting procedures I've tried to do in software are when the how-to page is only like 1 page long, and you might think, oh, that's easy, and then, well, it's what the page leaves out that you wind up running into issues with. So yeah, we already have to date a very good and in-depth guide on how to do that Linux install. I think, would it be safe to assume, Sparky, that we would get one as well when the Windows version releases?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a must for any of this softwares to document it well. I've just posted, if people aren't following the events discussion channel, I've just posted the link to the Linux guide there, so that for people who maybe haven't seen the software or haven't seen the install process, can go and have a look at that document and to see how the process is. Yeah, and as you say, Windows and Docker and NAS installs, when we get to those, will be documented in the same way. Yeah.
Superb. Yeah, and that did touch on something else that I'm really excited to be able to discuss. So because we did pursue the Docker native format of delivering the full license software, that will also enable it to be used on like Synology and like QNAP and those kinds of like NAS boxes, which I actually personally have one. So before too long, I'll be able to attest myself on how that full license setup goes. Because Docker. I mean, part of the point of Docker, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is that part of the selling point of using that as a way to run things is that it kind of runs on everything. So I'm glad that we went with this method of supporting Docker, because I mean, not that this is a challenge. It can be if you want it to be, but I think people will find very creative ways to have a full Xaminer install on some interesting types of setups. I think that could be a fun idea. So looking forward to seeing some of those. But yeah, so that Docker native full license is coming in, I believe, the next week or two. And I think that opens up a whole bunch of options for not only Windows installs, for which there will be very in-depth guides and documentation on how to do that. So if you are not full tech guru, which we have no expectation for you to be, which is part of the whole point of this Xaminer ecosystem, then you don't need to be worried. We're going to hold your hand through the process, and you'll get over the finish line, we promise. So for those of you who have either a $99 license already, like the basic license, or if you have the Xaminer hardware and you have you already have a spare license, or in the sense that we gifted everybody who has a Xaminer, you get accompanying with it, you get a $99 basic license, just thrown in for free, because we really appreciate the support that the full Xaminer hardware gives us. And we really like seeing these kinds of tandem setups or twin setups where somebody has an Xaminer and then maybe a DIY next to it, and they can kind of compare the two together. That's just a soft spot for me. I like seeing those pictures. I think somebody shared a good one yesterday, or 2 days ago. But anyway, I say for those of you who that applies to, or for those of you who have $99 licenses, I know statistically speaking, it is most of you, and it's me as well, in the sense that the DIY I mentioned earlier that I have, that's on a Synology box, that does have the basic license at the moment, and it's waiting for that full Docker to be available. But that upgrade process is, I think I have the listing in front of me. So it's $350 to upgrade from the $99 license. And that's because the full software before rebates is $450. Now, there is a 55% rebate on that $450 license. One thing that I had to clarify actually before the call, because I didn't realize how good of a deal it was, is that for those of you who have, so if you have the Xaminer hardware, and we already discussed that we threw in the $99 free license, or we threw in a $99 free license to accompany that, which can be used if you have other hardware or if you have the ability to set up a new provider. So in the shop already today, we have that upgrade process that you can follow to pay that $350 to upgrade to the full license. But what I didn't realize was a real kicker is that the rebate, there is a rebate as well on those upgrade buys, on those upgrade purchases, and it is the same rebate as if you bought a $450 full price license. So for those, I'll do the math for you, because I had to math it out, because this seemed almost too good to be true, and I had to ask to make sure that it did work this way, and it does. So if you have an Xaminer, then you got the free, or you got included a $99 license. You can then pay $350 upfront to upgrade that to a full license, and then get like $250 back in rebates. So if you buy one Xaminer, it comes out to like for $100 in the end, you can get a second Xaminer that has the same UI, all the same capabilities of auto announce and auto pricing and setting up storage automatically. All the financial reporting, like all the features that we'll get into in a second, you get all of that for, in the end, only like an extra $100, because the rebate amount is the full amount for the full $450. So if you do the math, I think it is pretty compelling. I didn't realize that it worked out to that good of a deal. But yeah, I think it's awesome, and we are, I think, giving a very good opportunity for people to be able to get on board. I think there hasn't been a better time to get on board, and I don't know that there will be a better time to come aboard than today. So do the math. I think you'll be impressed. Yeah. So working toward the features that I just kind of touched on, what are some of the features of the Examiner and the full license UI? I probably won't spend too much time on this because I think we've highlighted it a bunch on previous calls. And for those of you who already have Examiner hardware, I'm sure you've already been through the web UI and you know all the interfaces and how it works. I will highlight a bit on something that was a new feature and something that I like showing off is the Contract Explorer. So that was something we introduced, I think, less than a month ago in a UI update. But if you open up your Examiner UI, whether that's the full license or the actual Examiner hardware, under the Contracts tab, if you click the blue active contract number, yeah, so when you click that, it'll open up the whole log of contracts that your storage provider has been through. It's sorted by default, like chronologically, so the most recent are at the top, which I think makes sense to sort it that way. But you can see the size of the contract. You can see when it starts, when it's expected to end. I will say contracts can revise, so they can be extended, so that that ends time might change. It's not necessarily set in stone, but revisions they happen with the blessing of your provider. So they don't happen because somebody's like cheating you into a shorter contract, nothing like that. The conditions with which a contract is renegotiated or is revised are always within the same parameters that you have your provider set to. So it's just, yeah, that's a long way of saying that it's, although these figures can change, it'll almost never be in a way that shortchanges you or puts you at a disadvantage. It's usually just because something like, well, I think one of the most common reasons for a revision actually is because, hey, we initially formed this contract for this much data, but I actually want to use even more data than that. Can we keep the same rate, but like double the size of the contract, something like that? So these are all happening kind of every day automatically on the blockchain. This is the basis for how our kind of storage marketplace works. And I think it's kind of neat, and I'm glad that we're able to directly serve that in the UI and give some visibility into it. But I will say, I think on our end, and this is something that I'm happy to do, I would love for people to know more and learn more and be able to learn more about how these storage contracts work, because I think it's something that is really neat when it finally kind of clicks how it all works. And I've had that moment for sure before. In fact, I'll bring this up. When I was at NAB this past year representing SC Prime and XNet Services, so that was the April Las Vegas conference, I really liked explaining how our network worked, because I could see in their eyes when it kind of clicked and they realized like how, in a sense, how simple, but how elegant we've constructed it. And that's something that I chase every day. And I really like getting that click for people. So with that being said, so the contracts, these are contracts in the sense that you've probably heard them before in relation to blockchain. So it's a smart contract, meaning that it typically ties together two parties in some sort of agreement. In this case, since we are a storage marketplace or like a storage cloud, usually in a storage cloud, there's somebody who is providing the storage and somebody who's paying to use the storage. So that's no different here. So we call those renters and hosts, or renters and storage providers. So on one end, you have the renter of the contract, and you have the storage provider. So you guys are all the storage providers. I think you could at least put that together, which means you get paid for providing storage on the blockchain. And then who is the renter? in this agreement. So we are the renter in the sense that we as SCP Corp, we are on the blockchain and we're forming contracts with everybody who has a license. We're forming that contract for usually about a month at a time, but it renews every month because it's not like we don't want that storage anymore after it's a month old. I mean, we still need it there. But we form those contracts with you at a rate that, well, the ask is about $4 per terabyte per month. That's something we've been pretty consistent on. And we have learned enough from other storage markets and other storage networks to learn kind of what works and what doesn't. So we think that this $4 per terabyte per month is the winning strategy. In fact, that is actually one of the most generous offerings on any storage market or any storage, like blockchain related storage network. You're not going to get better than $4 per terabyte per month. And that's just even the base offering in the contract. That doesn't factor in incentives, which then go way above for now anyway. But yeah, so these contracts, so they form with us. We are the renter. But the way that, and this is where it gets kind of complicated, so I'll try and not lose anybody. And I understand that it is difficult because I'm just only able to use audio. I can't use any hand gestures the way I'm making them. But essentially how it works is we as SCP Corp form the contracts with you guys. The software that we then send to our clients to be able to rent storage, it's called the Relayer. I'm sure you've heard of it. At least I hope you've heard of it, because we talk about it at length because it's something we're really proud of and we think is awesome. So the Relayer renter, what it's doing actually is that it's able to use the contracts that we have formed, and it's able to upload storage to you guys, the storage providers, through our contracts. So the Relayer software doesn't directly form contracts, or it doesn't directly, each one doesn't need a fresh contract with you guys. That's how it used to work, but there's a lot of inefficiencies around that. So the most elegant and straightforward design is that we, SCP Corp, form the contract with you guys, and then our customers use that contract. So that's why if storage is suddenly being used a ton, why we might want to revise that contract, just say, hey, the contract on the blockchain level is maybe only for 700 gigs, but we're actually using your provider a lot. And we would like to keep using your provider a lot. So how's 1.2 terabytes sound instead? And then that buys a little bit of headroom. So then our customers can continue to use your storage provider. So that's kind of how the contracts work. And that's not just in the most literal sense of like the terms and all that, but that's how it fits into the architecture as well. So our clients are able to use your storage providers and upload to them directly, but we're handling the kind of blockchain level negotiations and that sort of thing, so that our customers don't have to. So we are pretty proud of that model. We think that anyone who is maybe familiar with other storage networks in crypto has some preconceptions that I think aren't always correct if they apply it to our network, in the sense that I've talked to some people recently who were pretty familiar with a different storage network, and when they looked at ours, they made all sorts of incorrect assumptions about how it worked. And then when I actually explained it, the sentiment was kind of like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense and is a lot more straightforward than some of the approaches that other networks are taking. So I think it's a pretty great architecture. I think it makes a lot of sense. It harnesses the strengths of distributed cloud while keeping some of the more complicated and intricate parts like storage contracts and managing like all that accounting. It keeps those kind of difficult things to a minimum. So that's why we do it in-house, so that we don't expect our end customers to have to do that. Yeah, I hope that was insightful. I really like explaining how our model and how our architecture works, because I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure if we could all be in person right now, I'm sure I'd be seeing someone out there, it kind of clicked for them and they kind of got how it works, and they think that's pretty cool. And that's what I really like about being able to do this, is having moments like that. So Anywho, so moving forward, we have that Contract Explorer that's really neat. I mean, personally, sometimes I just kind of look through it, and I mean, I guess it hasn't really changed since yesterday, but I still just kind of like checking it every day because I know that well, it's just kind of confirmation that yep, it is actually working. My storage provider is working as I expected. I can kind of directly see, oh yeah, here's my like revenue coming in. This is the amount that I've earned so far. That financial reporting, which well, it is, you can technically get that level of reporting from the basic license. Like there are some specific commands to be able to be outputted with like the raw like data from it. That's just kind of clunky, and nobody really does that. At least not like regularly. You might do it every once in a while, or if you're troubleshooting or something. But I think it's really neat, and I think our front end devs have done an awesome job of abstracting it to a pretty easy to interpret and pretty easy to access way. And I think that's going to be a pretty common theme across the different features that we offer. That sure, it's maybe something that you could already kind of do with the like with base SPD, but I think I think it's fair to say that we present it a lot nicer and it's a lot easier to access, and we'll be able to offer insights that just raw SPD doesn't. So that's something that's already a thing and is going to kind of keep being a thing as we build more features. So let me just look at my notes here. Yeah, one of the last things that I wanted to touch on, kind of regarding the UI, this is something that I think is maybe not appreciated enough, or at least in the sense that it's not something that you appreciate until you really need it. And that's the support tab of the UI. So it has all sorts of buttons kind of built in to be able to do things like re-announce or change ports or reset the ports, or even like accessing your logs pretty easily. So once again, these are things that I guess you could kind of manually do with SPD if you wanted to, but kind of challenging too, and you have to know off the top of your head what the commands are, and it's just not a very nice process, to be honest. You just usually you kind of do those things because you have to, but yeah, when they're kind of built right into the UI, it's just a lot easier to do that. And I think maybe a consideration or something you have to ask yourself if you're choosing to keep the basic license as opposed to going with the full license is, sure, you might be able to, or I might be able to, because I guess I do still technically have that basic license, even though I'm planning on going with a full when it's available for Docker, like I discussed earlier. But while I might be able to have installed and got set up the base SPD on my own, am I willing to, or am I able to, and do I have the patience to troubleshoot when issues eventually come? Not to say that I think there will be a lot of issues, because I think there's a lot of people out there who have run their provider for months and months and only occasionally have to like see if or double check something or give it a kick every now and then. But yeah, in general, if you're going to be choosing one setup over another, you don't just have to keep in mind, is this the setup I want to go with when times are good? You also have to keep in mind, is this a setup that I'm able to actually do some deep troubleshooting if that ever becomes a thing? And I think that, the fact that the support tab even has direct chat support. So, I mean, we heard Sparky's voice earlier, but if you want to hear what he sounds like over chat, I guess, I don't think that analogy is really working, but if you wanted to access him or one of the other tech support team, there is a direct line to them in the chat built right into the UI. So that's something that we're pretty happy to be able to offer, and definitely in line with the whole grandma thing that we were talking earlier. We don't expect grandma to download Discord and come into our tech support channels. Although it'd be pretty cool if she did. We know that that's not really a thing. So we had a need early on to offer that kind of support directly in our in the UI, and that's something we've had for a little while now. Well, actually, I think maybe a long while now. We've maybe had it since the spring, but that's something that that's something that you get with the full UI. That is, once again, it's kind of a thing with the basic in the sense that you can come into our Discord and get to export there. But I mean, it's not like that's hard. I mean, obviously, if you're in here in the in the server, you obviously know how to use Discord. But yeah, I think it's in line with our ethos of it's as accessible as possible. It's as streamlined as possible. And I think it's just easy to do. And on hard days where maybe you don't have a ton of time and then suddenly you check Grafana and for whatever reason your provider's down, it's just nice to be able to have those kind of options available. So that's something that I certainly appreciate personally.
I can confirm, Henry, that I sound the same on Discord as I do on chat. It is a nice feature and something which obviously people in the Discord don't really see because it's obviously outside the Discord, but it is a feature that people are using. I had someone have a chat session with me today, had some questions, just general questions which he did through the chat rather than through Discord. So it's just another avenue to reach the support team, as you say, without having to use Discord if people don't want to, because not everyone does.
Yeah, very true. So up to this point, we've kind of covered all the features that are already in the UI today or are in kind of encompassed in the Xminer hardware and the full license hardware, and even to some extent in base SPD. So some of the last things that I wanted to kind of touch on before we get to the next section of the call, where I'll be talking to some of you guys. Before we get there, I want to touch on some of the features you can expect to come over the next couple of months. So there's kind of 4 main ones that I want to cover today. The first one is related to compliance. So you've maybe heard of some of these. I think HIPAA is probably one of the best known ones, but there is almost an endless list of different compliance regulations that exist for different locales. So HIPAA is a US specific one, but the EU has their kind of analogs or their equivalents to that kind of thing. There's like SOC 2. There's a whole bunch of different compliance sets. And this is something that we know we want to chase, or this is something we've had our eye on and has been on the roadmap for a while. Not just because those kinds of needs and those people also need cloud storage, which they do, but we are particularly keen on supporting those kinds of compliances because typically it pays a lot better. So if you're able to jump through the hoops of proving, hey, I meet the requirement to be able to offer this kind of data that meets this compliance, typically, yeah, you can charge a premium for having that be a thing. And that is something that we as SCP, like as Exanet services, that's something that we would have as selling points, and we would be able to, I guess, charge more or collect more for having those regulations. And that's something that then you guys, or we would pay you guys more if you can offer those compliances as well. So if we get paid, you get paid. So these compliances are something that we expect in kind of the medium term to become a thing. We have already done a pretty good amount of homework on them. And we do have the expectation that typically these requirements, would have some kind of necessity, or at least the ability to prove some level of kind of a standard and consistent environment. So that has kind of informed how we've approached a lot of this full license stuff. So that's the reason why it's running, or that's at least part of the reason why it's running the same, or at least a very similar UI and supervisor and all the different components that we developed for the Examiner. That's something that we want very badly to be able to be made available to DIY as well. So that's why with the full license, it's you're still getting supervisor. It's almost the same UI, because we've tried to make that standardized environment be a thing, so that when we approach compliance certification, we can certify as many of you guys as possible. I mean, that's kind of a win-win, because then a lot of you guys will be able to access those higher paying tiers of storage, and we'll be able to offer to customers a much larger network to be able to store that. So We greatly benefit from being able to offer to customers as large of a network as possible, and I think you guys would also very much benefit from being able to use and access that compliance rated data. So that's a thing. The second point is around accounting. So yeah, the contracts that we kind of discussed at length earlier. So that is a blockchain level and kind of a smart contract level abstraction. If you get into the really nitty gritty, contracts can get kind of ugly, at least in the sense of like this is actually how the blockchain itself works, and it works in some kind of quirky and unintuitive ways. So there is a lot of work for us to do that we have already kind of timelined, or we've kind of measured and are approaching managing accounting and being able to present that in the UI in a very neat way. I think we've already done a good job, at least around some of the points. So I know the UI represents like your collateral, how much is locked, how much is risked, how much income you can expect from the current contracts that are active, that kind of thing. And I mean, we show all the transaction history log, but I think there is, like moving forward, there is going to continue to be areas to improve. And one of them that we have in mind is for tax season. Although that isn't right around the corner yet, I'm sure before we know it, it's going to be there. And instead of wading through pages and pages of transactions and all that, it would be very nice to have kind of a clean report made available. And that's something that we're going to work toward as well. That's on our roadmap, and that we have our eye on for developing in kind of the medium term. The third point, the third feature that you can expect over the next couple of months is remote management. So this is going to be through the console. So we've kind of, I think we've discussed this one a little bit before, but the meaning of that is so that you won't have to be directly on the local network if you want to access or edit some of the settings with your Examiner. And that's something that we'll be able to bring over to the full license UI as well, or the full license environment is the ability to just log in through the console, and even if you're not on the same network, you'll be able to control some aspects of the machine, which is pretty neat. And I think very handy, especially when we start seeing more and more setups where people have potentially multiple units running at the same time, and maybe some of them are in different locations, then it isn't a total headache and you're not having a team viewer to a bunch of different machines. All the machines that are registered to you will be available through the console, and you'll be able to access them that way. So that's something that we're looking forward to as well. And lastly, telemetry. So this is something that is a little lower level and is maybe not as sexy, but we do try and kind of collect everything in the sense that there's a lot of stats and reporting available to us, kind of in terms of like Examiner performance. Like I think some of you guys have seen that we track and display in Grafana like your disk temperatures, your network speeds, that kind of thing. But there's a lot that just kind of scratches the surface of what kinds of insight regarding different dynamics and aspects of your machine and your network and your environment. That's just kind of scratching the surface of what can be measured. And if it can be measured, it can be you can offer insights into it. So one of the things that I think we're kind of working toward as well, and we're figuring out how we want to approach it, is some kind of level of offering insights and tags as well, like custom tags for different Examiners. And I think at this point, when I kind of say Examiner, that like includes the full licenses. Because for most purposes, they are, I mean, that's what you're becoming when you install that full license. So yeah, so custom tags, that one in particular is kind of interesting. So what that would allow is if you're kind of an institution, or if you're somebody that has, like if you are kind of already in the cloud market, or you have customers that use you for storage of data, then what you can do is like purchase a couple dozen examiners or a couple dozen licenses and I guess build your own. And then what you can do is on all of the machines that you own, you can set a custom tag. And then if you are using our relayer software, you can then point some amount of that data that you're uploading out to the network. You can have it kind of so it is to some extent anyway biased toward your own machines. So you can kind of work both ends of that deal. So I think that's something that maybe doesn't have a ton of meaning for a lot of people, and unless you're at kind of a certain scale or in a certain position, but there's somebody out there who kind of understands what's possible with that. So if you're somebody that, like if you're a cloud consultant or something like that, then you have an opportunity to kind of earn at both ends of both selling storage and providing some of that storage. So that's something that we totally have in our roadmap or in our vision, and that's something that'll be possible in the kind of medium term. So pretty excited to be able to offer all those different features, both the ones that already exist today and the ones that are coming. And yeah, I think the only thing I can kind of underline under all of it is like, you don't have to have any of that. I mean, you can continue to be part of the network with the $99 license. I know there are some people who like will continue to do that, and that's fine. But I think just the point that I want to underline is that you will probably want to be part of this, because I think it's just getting more attractive all the time. The rebates are really generous right now, and I don't know that they're going to stay that generous forever. In fact, they're probably not. I mean, I don't know if we have any, like, that's not a threat. We don't have any immediate plans to take them down. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think there's a better time to come aboard. And I think the writing's on the wall of where this thing is, like what kind of features are coming and what's going to be possible. And it's really shaping up to be exciting. And I think there isn't going to be a better time to jump aboard. So if it seems like we're kind of pushing that right now, that's because that is what we believe. Like, this is the right time to make that jump. We really encourage you guys to. It's when I sat down and did the math and realized that if you already have an examiner, it's only like $100 to get another. That was pretty awesome, and I kind of realized how good of a deal it was for a lot of our community members. So yeah, I think no matter what way you kind of look at it, this is a good thing being offered. And nobody's making you do anything, but I think you'll want to. So it's all carrot, no stick. All right, for the last section of this call, I would like to open up the floor for people who have already gone through the full license setup process. So we touched on that kind of toward the beginning of the call. We've gotten some really good messaging from our community over the last couple of days or over the last week or so. Some of them very impressed with how smooth the process was. I think there was one guy who said like he went through it for one of his providers and was so impressed that like on the spot he got another license and went through it again, and it was just as easy the second time. So I would like to open up the floor for if there's anybody in the audience or who's able to speak right now that has gone through that process. We'd love to hear from you, and whether you had a good experience or a bad experience, I'd still like to be able to give you the floor to tell everybody what that experience was like.
Henry, before you move on, we've got Psychotics in the events discussion just posting some feedback. He was actually one of our beta testers. He's not in a position to be able to speak on the call, but who wants to see some feedback, it's there in the events discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Psychotics. So he has to say that he's not able to talk at the moment, but that he's been using it for a couple of weeks now, and he's been incredibly impressed with the software. The UI is really impressive and a much bigger upgrade than the basic license. So yeah, lots of happy customers. We're happy that you guys are happy, and that's always our goal. And we think we definitely believe that pretty much everything that benefits us can benefit you guys, and vice versa. So that's why we develop the things we develop, and our focus is where it is. So yeah, I will open up for questions now. I did a little bit of homework, and I did bring my own question actually. That somebody has pretty consistently over the last couple of weeks on YouTube under the recordings, they've been asking the question of why we have 3 websites. which is a fair question, and it's something that is probably a little unintuitive on the surface. So, yeah, it's true. We do have 3 website properties. So we have the SC Prime website, which is scpri.me. I'm pretty sure all these are in the YouTube description, by the way. So don't worry about having to make sure you heard me correctly. But we also have examiner.net, and then we have exapro.net as well. So these 3 website properties encompass our 3 kind of fronts as a company. So SC Prime is our kind of base storage network. So this is the one that is most oriented and kind of geared toward like crypto and blockchain and kind of the network that's under everything. But on that page, we don't have a ton of focus for specifically like how do you get involved as a storage provider, or how do I actually use your network? And that's because the kind of target audience of that website is if you're more interested in the kind of network dynamics and the network aspect of it. So that brings us to our second website, the examiner.net. So that one is catered kind of specifically toward storage providing. Obviously, Examiner is kind of our brand and our line for storage providing services and products. So that's the website that's geared toward offering storage and being able to make income off of that. And then exapro.net, that's our most recent website and the one that I've been personally sinking a ton of time into. And that's the one that is geared toward offering kind of a usable storage cloud service to end users and enterprise. So the target market of that website is more people who are already using traditional cloud services or have a use case in mind, and they're not necessarily as interested in like the network dynamics, and they're not as interested in providing storage. They're interested in how do you actually use this thing, and how can I use it as an alternative to like existing cloud services like AWS or Google Cloud or any of the others. So that's why we have 3, because they're all kind of catering toward different purposes and different target audiences. I think in the future, as each website becomes expanded more and as we offer more encompassing products and services, I think that difference will make more sense. I mean, maybe it doesn't make a ton of sense today. Well, we are just kind of beginning to offer on some of those websites, but I think in the future, as we build out each website even further and offer even more product lines, I think it'll make a lot of sense.
Oh, Psychotics is typing again, maybe some more positive feedback. Oh, in fact, I think he wants to talk now. He's put his hand up.
There we go. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. Sorry, I'm doing the whole parental Ubering thing and running kids around, so... yeah, I had a few moments to stay outside, and I just, I wanted to just take a second and really kind of hammer home, like, how well of a job that, the team has done to put together something for the DIYers like us. I know I have a very complicated setup, and they were very helpful with trying to, like, walk through that process and the... trying to capture all of the different things during the beta process. And it really couldn't have been any more simple, once we hammered out some of those bugs. But I'm a big tinker to begin with, but at the same time, having something where I can just like set it, forget it, periodically check in on it, that's probably been one of the best things about going through that full license process. And of course, you can't beat the rebates, so it's kind of a no-brainer, slam dunk, in my opinion.
Yeah, really glad to hear that. Thank you. And thank you for being part of that beta testing process as well.
No, absolutely. I've been playing around with a lot of the different software between that and the relayer, and just everything just works so seamlessly that once it gets in the hands of more people, they'll see it for themselves. So I'm glad to help.
I was going to say, one of the big takeaways for myself, especially from a support point of view, is while we've had some teething problems with the installer itself, we've had 0 issues with the software once it's installed so far, which is testimony to how good the quality of that X amount of software is in the first place.
Yeah, and I should say, well, I'm very glad that that's the case. I'm actually not shocked by it, because I think this software uses a lot of the technologies that we developed for the Xminer hardware, and we've gotten actually really good at that. So yeah, I mean, it's probably, while there is still like support cases every day in the Discord, if you look, they're almost always relating to like network setups and like plugging in the wrong Ethernet port, that kind of thing. It's almost always the case that once somebody's like up and running, it just kind of keeps working. So that's something that we're really proud to be in a place where that is a thing. A lot of hard work has gone into that, which I give credit to the development team, and as well I give credit to people who have helped beta test and pioneer some of that. So thank you, Psychotics, for being a member there.
Yep, my pleasure, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
There's one more, Henry. Druzy.
Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm outside as well. Okay, so my question is this. Let's say that I purchased a DIY from a partner distributor, and I also purchased my license through them. And I want to upgrade to the full license, and I get that from them as well. But down the road, with the features that are in the console, is there going to be an easy way for me to, I guess, claim my license for them so it's transferred from their accounts to my console?
Yeah, so that's kind of touching on some of the specific needs that our partners have. So I think you hopefully have the sense, and I think a lot of people would be able to attest to this, that we work pretty closely with our partners, and any needs that they have, we pretty quickly take care of. So if that's a use case that makes a lot of sense, and the ability to transfer from your kind of control to the end user for your own customers, I think that makes sense as something that needs to be developed. So work with us on that, and I'm sure we'll get that done in no time.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been a pleasure to work with the team. You guys are amazing to work with. Very responsive, very quick. Just great overall.
Thank you.
We've got another question, Henry. 18 spoons. There it is.
Okay, sure.
Hello there.
Hello.
I've received my miners, and what do you recommend? Is there a setup guide I can download, a video, or?
There certainly is, and I think no one on this stage is more qualified to answer that than Sparky, so I'll give him the pleasure.
All right, Sparky.
Thanks, Henry. Literally, I've been writing that today, having received my new miner yesterday. So if you give us probably sometime tomorrow, it's in review at the moment. We'll get that published on the website. We've got an Xminer guide there at the moment, but because the UI's changed quite a bit recently, it's a bit out of date. Hence why I was updating it with new screenshots, etc. So if you check back in there tomorrow, that should be on the website.
Okay, so it'll be on the website.
On docs.scpry.me. Yeah.
Okay.
And if he didn't want to wait till tomorrow and he insisted on getting started today, would the guide that's already in place today, would that still get him over the finish line, do you think? It
should do, yeah. Like I say, some of the screenshots are a little bit out of date in terms of the look and feel of the GUI, but it certainly gives the basics. I'll post the link in the events discussion channel now if you want to check there.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked, but also in the future, and this goes for any, like if you're ever kind of wondering where a guide or a resource is, in this Discord toward the top, we do have a FAQ project links, and that'll have everything that you are looking for as well.
Okay.
So you can go straight there as well.
All right. Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. All right, glad we got one more person able to speak this week. Been a bit of a different selection of voices than we've heard in some previous weeks, but I think hopefully this call has been interesting and insightful for you guys, and I think what's hopefully come through clearly is the sense of like focus and direction that we have for not just where things are today, but that we're like delivering on a lot of the things that have been focuses historically. So if you were to go back in the storage provider calls a couple of months ago and you find the things that we were talking about then, I think those will be a lot of the things that we have now achieved. And then I think you'll find that a lot of the things that I talked about in this call that were future facing before too long are going to be things that we've achieved as well. So that probably concludes this week's call. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Hope maybe if you get some questions that you thought of kind of late, maybe you can drop those in the channel and we might be able to touch on those next week as well. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the channel and speaking next week. Take care.